took over in 1997, London schools were quite often a byword for not doing well. And we absolutely transformed that. And we've got to do the same right across the country. And you can absolutely do it. And it requires the right combination of investment, accountability, giving teachers actually and head teachers power they need in schools to shape an exciting curriculum for people. So look, I don't buy the idea that we can't have a really transformative effect on education without doing the things that you suggested. On Ben's question, look, you know, Ben, you'll have to make your own judgment about this event. I mean, after all, I got the question from you. These questions are not planted questions. I try and engage as much as possible in this election campaign. And, you know, I think if you compare myself and David Cameron, I'm doing these kind of events with questions from all comers or regularly, once every couple of days. I'm going to keep doing it right to the end of this election campaign. And I think that's actually what people want to see. And look, I do try and do walkabouts. I did one yesterday. I think it's fair to say it became a bit of a scrum because there tend to be lots of other people, if you like, who want to follow my walkabouts. But look, I'm always looking for ways to engage people in this election campaign, not just, you know, with the big sort of marquee events like last night on television, but direct engagement like this. On Ryan's question, Ryan, this is really important. This is a really, really important question. And you know, I think there's been a big transformation when it comes to LGBT plus issues in our country, but we're not there yet because we've got formal equality, which is like certainly, you know, much better than it was 20 years ago, but we've still got a long way to go to get real equality. By the way, it's not just true in relation to LGBT, it's true in relation to gender and race and many, many other areas. Well, and that is a constant struggle. The battle for equality is never won. And therefore, we've got to do it in relation to universities and we've got to do it in relation to schools. I think lots of schools are getting much better, but there's still homophobic bullying and lots of things that need to be dealt with. And it is incredibly important for the future, the security of our young people that we do, and we will. And it will make it a constant part of our mission. Katie, I hope Liam answered your question. Becky, your question about mental health issues, I think there's a lot more that we need to do. The things that we want to do, change the NHS constitution to ensure that people have access to talking therapies, because at the moment, many, many people don't. We want to try and get towards, we can't yet promise a timetable for this, a 28-day waiting period, 28-day waiting to get access to talking therapies. That's what's been recommended by a report that we had commissioned on this. And yes, we do need training of teachers in mental health. And that is absolutely something we want to undertake and we want to do. Because I think your experience and the experience of lots of other people suggests it's a big gap. And it is a gap that we've got to deal with. Iona, who asked the question about legal aid. I mean, this government has really, really sort of slaughtered the legal aid system in a way that is really denying people, many people, access to justice. We want to look at this. I can't make you a promise today, Iona, because we've got to make sure the sums add up, but we do want to look at it, and we want to look at what we can do. We did make some suggestions of changes the government should have made when they were looking to make reductions in spending, other reductions that would have been a better way to have done this. We will definitely look at that in government. And Charlotte, thank you for your question, and this is why these events are important, because I've learned something from you about some of the challenges that you face. And let us take away this issue of how we make sure that in the educational system there is the kind of flexibility that you're talking about. And obviously it's going to vary from university to university and college to college, but I think it's a really important point, and I think, you know, young carers do a heroic job, and it is really important that we stand up for you, and we will. Right, I'm going to take some of my media friends. I'm going to take Peter Hunt from the BBC.
Peter Hunt, BBC News. Mr Miliband, you've ruled out a coalition with the SNP. You've made very clear the differences between your party and the SNP. Why now can't you very clearly say to the people here and the people watching that you rule out any form of deal with the SNP, however loose?
I think anybody who watched the debate last night, Peter, will have seen fundamental differences between me and Nicola Sturgeon. Fundamental differences are on the issue of cutting the deficit and balancing the books. Fundamental differences on the issue of national security, and indeed fundamental issues on the breakup of the United Kingdom, which she still wants to have happen. Now, you know, I couldn't have been clearer about this. We're not going to have a coalition. How other parties end up voting on a Labour Queen's speech is frankly going to be a matter for them. And I do want to say this about the debate last night, because I think there was a big choice on offer. And that's the choice between me and David Cameron. And it's a choice about what kind of country we want. I believe in a country where we put working families first. He believes in a country where we put the rich and powerful first. But the difference is, he won't come and debate me. Look, he wants to duck, weave and dive his way back into Downing Street. And look, you know, if he had guts, he'd come out and he'd accept my challenge to debate me one-on-one, head-to-head. I made the challenge yesterday. Month after month, week after week, the Conservative Party said they want an election about leadership. Well, I'm offering him a debate about leadership. I'm offering him a one-to-one debate about the future of the country. I've been saying week after week, anytime, anywhere, any place. He's got nearly 3 weeks of this campaign left. Why don't we have that debate? And we can debate all of the issues, not just Tory scares, but actually the future of this country. Let's take Sophie.
Sophie Ridge, Sky News. You dismissed Nicola Sturgeon's call for a progressive alliance to lock out the Conservatives last night. All the polls point towards a very, very close election. So are you really saying that you would prefer to see David Cameron as Prime Minister rather than doing some kind of alliance, if not a formal coalition, with the Scottish National Party?
Look, my message is very simple, which is if you want a Labour government and you want to see an end to the Tories, vote Labour. And it's very quite simple. And you know, I think the history and the facts speak for themselves. I've spent my life fighting the Conservative Party. Nicola Sturgeon has spent her life fighting the Labour Party. Now, you know, look, I happen to believe that Nicola Sturgeon does want a second referendum on independence. She hasn't ruled it out from her 2016 Scottish Manifesto. I think there's nothing that would suit the SNP more than the return of a Tory government. And you know, the reality is that for every one less Labour MP is more likely to have David Cameron back in Downing Street, maybe in alliance with Nick Clegg or Nigel Farage or anybody else. So, you know, my message to Nicola Sturgeon is thanks but no thanks, and, you know, vote Labour for a Labour government.
Carl Dinnan from ITV News. Nicola Sturgeon would still rather see you in Downing Street than David Cameron. If it came to it, getting a Labour Queen's speech through and accepting the support of the SNP on a vote-by-vote basis, wouldn't you owe it to everyone who'd voted Labour to accept that?
Look, what I owe to everybody in this election is to put forward a manifesto and put forward a Labour Queen's speech after the election. But I want to be clear about this. I don't think we decide the results of the election before the election has even happened. And, you know, I think lots and lots of people are jumping way ahead here. I'm working for a majority Labour government. I believe we can win a majority Labour government. You know, let's actually see what happens on May the 7th. Because, look, I'm determined to change this country. And, you know, I think something very interesting is happening in this campaign. Because I think that actually it's the Labour Party that is showing in this campaign that we will take on all comers, as I did last night, that we will put forward an agenda for the future, and you've got David Cameron just hiding away. Now, my general experience of general elections is that parties that try and hide away and don't really want to face the people are parties that tend to lose elections. So let's actually see what happens on May the 7th, Carl. But I feel we're the campaign with momentum. I'm going to take Andy.
Thanks, Andy Bell, 5 News. But what do you say to voters, especially in England, who worry, maybe are thinking about voting for you, who worry that if they do, they will simply end up with a weak Labour government over which Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP have an extraordinary and decisive influence? What do you say to them who are worried about that?
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And let me explain why. Look. Look, I asked people at home to judge me on what I said last night. You know, I will never compromise our national security. I will never compromise our commitment to fiscal responsibility. I will never compromise on the nature of our United Kingdom. And you know, frankly, you know, the first budget of the Labour government is going to be written by the Labour government. It's not going to be written by Nicola Sturgeon or Alex Salmond or anybody else in the SNP, and I couldn't be clearer than that, Andy. Anybody else who wants to ask a question? I'll take another couple of young people, and then I think we're done. There's a lady here.
Hi, I'm Amy. Studying at college, studying photography, I often find when I go to look at universities, they don't really want my qualification because it's not seen as good as a traditional academic course. I'm just wondering what the Labour Party do to equal the playing field and bring that back up so we're seen as...
You're doing an apprenticeship, Amy, are you?
No, I'm studying photography.
Photography. What's the degree? What nature of the degree?
It's foundation degree.
Okay, it's a good, really good, important question. Yep, there's a gentleman in the middle.
Hi Ed, my name's Joe, I'm 22. For a lot of my recent life, I've been told that young people don't care, aren't interested and don't work hard, and that's not just in politics. And I think that today in this room, quite the opposite has been proven. Whereas last night on TV, our Prime Minister proved that he's the man who doesn't care, isn't interested and doesn't work hard. With you as Prime Minister and under the next Labour government, what will you do to combat these misconceptions and see that young people do work hard and sometimes they just need that extra bit of support?
Yeah, okay. I hear he was washing his hair last night, so, you know, you can forgive him. There's a gentleman next to you.
Hi, my name's Kyle. You've talked a lot today about accountability, and I just wanted to know what you thought about the recent decision to not prosecute Lord Janner, even though there's suspicion that he may have committed child abuse. I mean, you've talked a lot about young people. This is a fundamental issue of protecting young people.
Understood.
So I just wanted to know what you thought.
Understood, Kyle. And I'm going to take the lady next to you, and I think you get the last question.
Oh, hello, George Thompson from University of Lincoln. I basically just want to know, we're living in a very rapidly changing world at the moment, and I want to know how you plan for education to basically be innovative in this environment, basically.
Georgia, how do you think we should do it? What's your experience and how should we do it?
I think basically we need to... Sorry.
What do you do? What are you a student or?
I'm social media officer, so
Right.
I know that the university at the moment has an MA now to do social media, basically, and to and I was just wondering, what would you?
What could we do to?
Yeah, what could you do?
Okay, let me go in reverse order. On your question, I think there's a lot we need to do to keep education kind of up to date. I think it's true in schools. I mean, I go into schools these days, and it's transformed, obviously, even in a decade. But I think we should. It seems to me one of the issues is, almost like computer science and, as it was called, or ICT, is seen as like a separate kind of compartmentalized thing, whereas actually it's part of the whole of the way we learn these days. And I think partly we need to get that into our heads. I suspect we need to start earlier in primary schools on some of those issues. And I think there's all kinds of ways that we can make education more innovative, more creative. I think sometimes education in schools, there are great schools that don't do this. Sometimes it does seem like it's not that different from 20 or 30 years ago. And I think that's what has got to change. Carl, you asked an important question. Look, these are obviously matters for the Crown Prosecution Service. I'm deeply shocked by the allegations that have been made and what the CPS seem to have discovered. My heart goes out to the alleged victims in this case. I think it's incredibly important that at the very least the overarching inquiry into child abuse that has been set up talks to all of those alleged victims so they at least get a chance to have their say, even if they don't feel that they get justice. And I think there's just a wider issue for all of our institutions. I mean, this is an incredibly serious, the most profound and the most serious issue. And I think there's a massive lesson for the institutions of our country about understanding. And that's why I'm glad the government set up this overarching inquiry, because we've got to learn the lessons. We've got to learn the lessons for the future about how some of these things were allowed to go on. And I think everybody's been shocked by